The Institute for Faith and Freedom at Grove City College presents Liberty Mail with the Student Fellows of Faith and Freedom.
Welcome to Liberty Mail. I'm Aaron Jenks.
And I'm Libby Krieger.
And we are here at Grove City College in the underground studio. This is brought to you by the Institute for Faith and Freedom.
Yeah, so just getting into things this week, we have our first win of the week is a pop culture win. Most of you have probably seen this somewhere, but Nicki Minaj has been all over the news on Twitter. First of all, what she did, with the Met, she said that, okay, let me read this tweet actually. She said, thank you. They want you to get vaccinated for the Met. If I get vaccinated, it won't be for the Met. It'll be once I feel I've done enough research. I'm working on that now. In the meantime, my loves, be safe. Wear the mask with 2 strings that grips your head and face, not that loose one. So not even necessarily a conservative stance with her last part of that, telling people to necessarily wear the masks. But she's saying that she hasn't done enough research and doesn't want to get it because she's being forced to by the Met.
Correct. And I know a lot of the outrage didn't really come about because of that, but it was further when she tweeted about some side effects that her friend was experiencing.
In Trinidad, I believe.
Yeah. And then that's when the Twitter
Reid.
masses kind of
the Twitter masses and Joy
exploded
Reid.
on her. Oh, yeah, her too. What was her comments?
So Joy Reid basically attacked her on her show, saying that this is a disservice to Black Americans, telling them not to get vaccinated. And that's not what Nicki Minaj said. She said that you should do your research, and she said that she wasn't specifically going to get it until she did enough research on her own. So I think there is misconstruing her saying that she needs to do more research with being an anti-vaxxer, which is what we've seen all across the media, as you mentioned last week.
It's really interesting to see that we have like these pop stars that we wouldn't really expect to come out and just be vocal against the common narrative, which we kind of see Hollywood or pop stars with the left. And I know she retweeted Tucker Carlson, which...
You know how much the left hates Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, that almost enraged everyone a little bit more.
Yeah.
And the craziest thing I saw come out of this was that a couple articles were saying that Tucker Carlson and those in the conservative movement were going to use this situation as like almost a power grab of culture. And because when Nicki Minaj tweeted all these things, almost half of her followers, I don't know, these stans of Nicki Minaj, stood by her and didn't want to kind of just like trash talk her on Twitter. Yeah,
because there's a whole stan culture, you said, on Twitter. I'm not super familiar with that. I know I've heard people say, oh, we stan this person, we stan that. But I guess it's a way of showing your support?
I think they're called barbs, what...
Twitter lingo.
I guess I know this stuff now, but they're called barbs, and they're hashtagging I stand with Nicki, and they wouldn't allow her to be, they said, oppressed or silenced because of what she was just saying. And that in itself, just seeing people stand up for her, no matter what. Like, we don't need another popular person to tell Nicki Minaj, oh, you're trash. You can't, don't say this. You're hurting the community. People themselves are going to realize it.
Well, and the problem here that we're seeing is someone in the pop culture didn't follow the mainstream narrative, and the establishment, Joy Reid here, and others on Twitter are trying to out her and ostracize her for not falling in line. I mean, you look at almost every other celebrity is telling you to get vaccinated, and so they have enough people doing that, but when someone dissents, that's where the problem is. We can't have difference of opinion in this country anymore.
Yeah, it's not even like she's telling them, don't get vaccinated. She's, I'm not going to get vaccinated. This is my personal stance. And she almost has to come out and give her stance because of where she is in the public light. But
well, it's a shame that now every pop culture star or anyone in the news has to give their opinion on everything. I mean, Nicki Minaj, she's no doctor. This is great that she said that, but also, why do we need to know everyone's opinion on everything anymore?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Another star who I know came out and was kind of being attacked for this. She didn't really make any comments on her intentions in this, but Rihanna wore a T-shirt that said, think while you still can. So that's a pretty... It was pretty upsetting to a lot of people on Twitter, assuming that it might be a conservative statement. Just considering what happened with Nicki, thinking outside of the mainstream narrative and was completely attacked for it. So I think that is a good indication that even some people who are considered usually in the mainstream are pushing back.
Yeah, she wasn't even stating anything vocally. She just wore a fashion T-shirt, and I guess that shirt cost like $300. So it's not just
really?
some. Yeah, it's a bougie T-shirt. It's not just some random T-shirt, dad shirt.
Yeah.
But she got a lot of support from just conservatives hopping on it.
I think Donald Trump Jr. put something up about it.
Because they just, I don't know, they identify with that, that kind of sentiment that speak now or else the government's going to slowly crash on your liberties. And there wasn't a lot of pushback other than news articles saying that, no, she's not a conservative, no, she's not a conservative.
Well, what I love about that is whether or not this was a political statement, she did it really subtly too. So because there wasn't as much pushback maybe had she made a comment about it, but it's a little subtle jab at the mainstream progressive narrative. So I can appreciate that.
I agree. And whether she is voicing support or with Nicki Minaj or not, it's just good to see continuous kind of pop idols or, I don't know, famous people coming out against it, going against the narrative.
Yeah, and I know we talked about how everyone has to give their opinion on everything anymore if you're in the news at all or in the media. There were some basketball players. I know you know a little bit more about this than I do, but they were being asked by the press if they were vaccinated, and one of them, I believe he was from the Golden State team.
There you go.
He said that this is none of their business. He's like, I go on my timeline and not on yours, so I don't have to answer to that.
Yes, first of all, the NBA implemented rules that everybody must get vaccinated, and then the state of California has their own state laws that you cannot play in an indoor arena without having a vaccine. And so the two biggest players, well, the first player you're talking about, Andrew Wiggins, for
the Warriors?
Yeah,
is
oh my
that
gosh, I just blanked. Golden State Warriors.
Okay.
But Andrew Wiggins didn't want it, and he's getting fined. It could cost him like $15 million lost in his salary this season. And then the next biggest person is Kyrie Irving, and they haven't come out and said why, other than it's their own personal belief. They don't want to they want to do what they want to do. And people are losing their mind against that.
I think one of the reporters even said, well, you're losing so much money. And he went back and he said, well, that's my problem, not yours.
Yep.
So really good to kind of push the media back into their place, saying this is not something that you need to be pushing me on.
Yeah, and Wiggins even keeps on saying, he goes, it's none of your business. And right here I said it. He says, I don't ask you about your beliefs. I don't ask you about what you guys think is right or wrong. I just play basketball. So let the man play his sport. Don't worry about anything in his personal life. But, of course, there's that intrusion that the media and I think people just want to constantly see when they watch and idolize these people. Yeah.
So I guess what we're seeing here is whether it's Rihanna, Nicki, or these basketball players, we're seeing people who are not traditionally considered conservative or part of the movement are taking a step back and looking at the facts and trying to be more logical about it and weigh both sides. So I think that's it's a good win.
Yeah, I think at sometimes it might be a stretch to even like group these individuals with like conservatism, but I think the biggest connection is just we identify with what they're stating and how it goes against the common narrative that we've just grown up in, and so that in itself
because I think that leads to an opportunity for conservatives to bring them in.
I agree with that.
Or
yeah.
at least bring some aspects of people who resonate with that message.
And even push back on social media on people that constantly see only one narrative, and then like, wait, I follow this person. I love this. I followed him. I like every photo, and they're saying something different than what every single other person in the NBA or the music industry is saying.
Yeah,
let
Nicki
me look
has,
into this.
20 million followers or something like that. And that's why Joy Reid was so upset, too. She said, you have a platform of this many people, and you're going to put vaccine hesitancy or tell people to be anti-vaxxers. So she's using her platform to do that.
Yeah, let them do what they want with their own life. It's their liberty to do so.
Absolutely. So our next win, really exciting stuff. I know when Aaron saw this, his mind was blown. But a ProLife group is being announced this weekend, I believe, and it is made up of feminists, progressives, LGBTQ members, a bunch of different people that you would not typically expect to be in a pro-life organization. And I think this is a huge win that we're seeing, even if it is a single issue here, but we're seeing a very diverse backing of the pro-life issue.
Mm-hmm. And this has got to be my favorite topic that is that we've covered over these 3 past weeks, because, as you said, I think I ran and told like 10 people. I was like, guess who just formed a pro-life group? You can't guess.
You would never guess.
Yeah, and then I know you left out, but secularists and atheists are with them too. And it's diverse in the fact that we have all these groups, but they're all progressives or liberals. And the 5 main leaders of the organization are all self-identified progressives. It is just so, it's almost motivating and reassuring.
Really encouraging.
Yeah, encouraging to just see
movement.
them come out and say that the Democratic Party is not representing its constituents' interest.
Yeah, and I know the leader, so Teresa Bukovac, I cannot say that. Yeah, something like that. She served as the president of Democrats for Life of America. So that is the leader of this organization that will be opening up this weekend. And so something else that they said is the values of equality, nonviolence, and non-discrimination are incompatible with abortion. And to be truly progressive, one must be willing to be actively anti-abortion. And I think it's a reframing of the pro-life movement for sure, and maybe not the way that conservatives would see it, but if we can bring in progressives to be anti-abortion and try to save as many lives as we can, I think that is a really valuable thing to be able to bridge this gap on such an important issue and save lives.
Absolutely. And I know over the past maybe 5 years, polls have indicated that it's around 56% of Democrats, and it's like Pew Research I was looking at, 56% of Democrats think that abortion should be regulated, and especially after the first three months or first trimester.
Okay.
And then it's only like 16% believe that abortion should be unregulated completely. And this whole pro-life group is arguing that the media and the Democrats have been just pushing that 16%, their view, on the rest of America, the rest of the Democratic Party. And they're upset with it, and they're tired, and they're going to fight back. And it is crazy to believe that they said in their advocate group right now, they have 21 million Democrats, 12 million secularists, and roughly half of the women in the nation that are demanding the expansion of rights for the unborn members in their communities.
Yeah, I don't know where she's getting those numbers, but if that's true, that's incredible.
Hey, I'm a fan. She said that over the next year or two, they're going to be specifically going into blue cities, Democratic cities, and holding protests, especially against the Women's March, which is
like a counter protest.
I don't even. Maybe that's bad wording. It's not against the women's protest, but almost to raise awareness because they support the women's protest or the Women's March. My bad. And they're almost saying, okay, you guys agree with this,
kind of trying to bridge the gap between the feminists there and.
I think so, or maybe even get them to stand back a step and then reevaluate their position on it and why they believe it and why they've been kind of holding on to this common theme of pro-abortion. Yeah,
and I think this is an important look at how conservatives can message and try to reframe the issue to broaden the pro-life base. So the way that this group is talking about it is like fetal rights and non-discrimination, whereas we would look at it as the sanctity of human life, also kind of fetal rights, I guess you could say, or unborn children rights. But I think this is, do you think, I guess, a question for you, do you think we should adopt this reframing or stick to how we've framed it for the last however many years as conservatives?
Yeah. Personally, I think we should stick the route that we've been going. And I know like we've been identified as, we hold these pro-life opinions because of Christian Judeo values. And I know Bukovac even talked about that pro-life argument is always framed in that light, and that's what she's trying to go against. And it doesn't hurt our argument against it, but it just supports it.
Broadens it.
Okay, there are different avenues that you can go through to support pro-life. And I really hope that some conservative groups like Live Action reach out to Bukovac's group and say, okay,
form an alliance of some sort.
Yeah, we might not agree on why we specifically believe this. You don't believe in my God. I don't believe in your secularist views or atheist views. But we both think that the unborn child should be protected, and let's work together to make that happen in America.
And I think this is really great timing, too, as you see the Supreme Court will take on the Dobbs case, and it's yet to see how that one will be decided. But there's definitely a possibility that at least Roe is questioned and challenged in that decision. Another quote that I think really hits it on the mark is Bukovac said, "The abortion industrial complex only holds power through the relationship with the left, and it is built on a lie. I intend to dismantle those lies and force the party to change and be truly progressive." So again, really interesting how she's framing it as a progressive value. But if that gets more people to be supportive of saving babies, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, she's great. I read some of her articles, and she's really well-read, well-educated, and her arguments and her blogs that she posts, they're really good. There's not a lot of holes or gaps in her, almost in her logic. And she even called out, this is my favorite thing, she called out Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of Planned Parenthood.
Big on eugenics, actually.
Yes, and at least for the past 8 years that I've been looking into all this, the conservatives say that Planned Parenthood is like a racist foundation or organization.
Yeah.
And every time I have conversations with personal people in my life, or I see it online posted, the left is like, that is a
conspiracy theory.
Conspiracy theory. That's not
course.
true whatsoever. And then you see these long posts that like date it back and back, and like how she was a white supremacist. And then you have these super liberals that come out and say that, yeah, Margaret Sanger was a white supremacist, and she was a member of the Ku Klux Klan.
Was she really?
That's her words. And I've seen
that's what she's
conservatives
saying.
say that. But it's just crazy to see that narrative now hold
Be
some
adopted
water.
by the progressives.
Yeah. So good for her organization as they move forward.
Yeah, finding some common ground. That's great. I know, and also absolutely horrible what's been happening at University of Pittsburgh, which kind of ties into this. It looks like at least it's a possibility that they were extracting organs from live fetuses. And I know that's been getting a lot of pushback, especially among the pro-life community. It's just horrific if that's actually been what's been happening down there in Pitt. And we've seen the Harrisburg pro-life march recently too.
Yep.
So I don't know if that was a reaction to what was happening at Pittsburgh, but I'm sure that fueled a lot of people there.
Yeah, the Pitt reports came out this past week, correct?
1 or 2 weeks ago, yeah.
1 or 2 weeks ago? Okay. And it was almost shocking to see it, and I saw so many people reach out to call the university and complain about it, and even parents say, okay, my child goes here, I'm going to, or even students that go there, I'm going to pull my money from your school. You got to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
At least give me the facts. It's good to be, it almost is contrasting with how I think if Planned Parenthood facts will come to light in this whole like new leftist pro-life movement.
Yeah.
If they will actually get to the bottom of the Democrats backing Planned Parenthood and government funding of that.
Yeah, we'll have to see if this progressive pro-life group takes root and if there's momentum to it. I really hope that can be something that we bridge the gap on between the left and the right. And I know this has been said that there's a pro-life generation, and if you look at the pro-life march down in D.C. every year, I think it's end of January, early February, there's probably close to 1 million people. Definitely rivals that of the turnout of the Women's March. So let's hope this movement keeps growing so we can save the babies.
Yeah, it's awesome. Blew my mind this morning. And yesterday.
Yeah.
Blew my mind.
Keeps doing it. So, Aaron, I know you have the last win of the week. Looks at Los Angeles, something on vaccination requirements. So I guess it kind of starts off with a loss as what they're trying to do.
Yeah, so the LA Council is trying to implement a vaccine passport. And we had one brave soul, Councilman Joe Buscano, if that's correct, or butchering his name. And he had a couple statements about why he didn't want this ordinance to be passed. And his first thing was that he's like, okay, before we even think about this, he goes, unenforceable laws are ridiculous. He goes, if we actually do this, we can't personally enforce it, and it's going to fall to the business owners and the workers. And he mentioned that like teenage hostess or teenage workers at fast food restaurants are going to be asked to almost be a bouncer and be like, give me your vaccine passport.
Yeah. And what happens if they get overpowered, or you're setting it up for a policy failure? And I think you have some unintended consequences. But I'm not sure. Did we mention what the actual proposal is? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's, you have to be vaccinated to go to restaurants, movie theaters, basically anything in public.
All indoor venues.
Okay.
You need a vaccine mandate.
And is there any
passport?
Okay. Is there any option for a negative test? Is that something that?
Not in indoor venues. There are for outdoor venues. If you'd like to eat in an outdoor setting, you have to show a negative test within 3 days. But
but how are they going to enforce that? You need basically just state police.
Exactly. You either have
Gestapo.
you have police constantly patrolling the areas, which goes against kind of their agenda of
turn into Australia at that point.
Yikes. And then you have either local businesses enforcing it, and you're putting power into the civilians' hands to be like, okay, I'm going to take a stand against my fellow civilian, and we don't know how that will turn out.
You're pitting people against each other.
Exactly. You're just further dividing them.
Yeah, and also I know one of the supporters of this was arguing that this rule was to protect young children who were too young to get the vaccine. But statistically, looking at people who are hospitalized and actually have bad reactions to COVID-19, young people are not really, especially young children, it's very rare. So to have this overarching policy where you have to be basically forcing vaccination to participate in a regular life for the sake of people who will not really be hurt by the virus itself is absurd. And I think it just shows that they're trying to push this mandate more than anything. It's not about saving lives. We can't save every single life with policy. This is just about pushing the narrative.
Yeah, a couple of the other councilmen, one is Martinez. He stated that this is about saving lives, and political stunts like this from Joe Puscano are now putting people at risk.
So he's accusing him of a political stunt. Meanwhile, he's doing the exact same thing. And
this councilman has been historically progressive in the city of LA. I looked at his voting record a little, and just some other past statements from him, stories, and they almost always unanimously agree. And now he steps out of line, and he said, hold up, there's some consequences for local businesses, workers. We don't want to make people enforce this that are teenagers, he used as an example. And then he just gets, no, you're ridiculous. You're pulling a political stunt. For what?
Wow. Well, did you see President Biden was asked at what point we can get back to normal, basically? And he was saying maybe 97, 98% vaccinated. That is never going to happen. If he thinks that 97 or 98% of Americans, when they're being forced to get vaccinated, I know half the reason some people are skeptical is because the government is pushing it so hard. That is never going to happen. And so what it sounds like is we're just going to keep this cycle. You're not going to be fully vaccinated anymore unless you have the boosters too. So what happens? A third shot, and then a fourth shot, and this just keeps on going.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of this policy strategy from the leaders, but I'd almost like to see, let the people who don't want to get vaxxed, they state their reason for whatever. Let them do what they want.
They shouldn't even have to state a reason.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be forced to have to justify yourself either. It's not the government's business.
It's a frustrating topic, and I really hope that moving forward it doesn't continue to come up, but we know that once we give the government some of our liberties, they're going to keep on pushing forward with them.
Yeah, they're never going to be like, you know what? I'm going to give you some of these liberties back. I don't need them anymore. No, they're going to keep taking as much as they can. And I think it's an important point you made about the businesses too. The councilman said it'll affect the small businesses because we're already seeing, again, we've talked about this before, but businesses across the nation are totally struggling to find workers. The supply chain, we've seen that in some of our, even ordering T-shirts here at the Institute. The supply chain has been pretty backed up, and it's taken a long time to get the products. Even printing books, I know that we were looking for a book,
that, yep.
and you can't get paper. So how do they think these policies, these really restrictive policies, are going to help anyone?
Well, okay, so in New York, in the past year, I know that even when some of these rules have been implemented that say you need to show proof of vaccine or you can't go into an indoor venue without proof of a vaccine, people just push back. Businesses say we're not implementing that. They stop checking. And that's almost where I think the Councilman Joe says they're unenforceable laws or this is an unenforceable ordinance.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have these businesses that push back and don't implement it. And then what? You're going to fine them and hurt local businesses
hurt more
even
businesses, put more people out of work. It's going to cost taxpayers more. I don't know if you saw this too. I thought it was kind of funny. Well, actually scary, but funny. And a reporter asked White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki about how businesses will be raising prices because they are taking on more costs, whether it's with more taxes or just some of the other costs that have happened. And she's saying it's absurd for them to raise prices on consumers, on Americans. But I'm no economics major, but whenever you force businesses to pay more, they're going to have to cut somewhere. And they're going to either fire workers, lower wages, or they're going to have to raise prices on consumers.
Yeah, they have to make a profit.
Yeah, it's a business. It's not a charity.
I saw even the dollar store has raised prices over $1.
Really?
Yes, for
they're gonna have to change their name.
A majority of their products now are over $1 because of supply chain issues and inflation rates. It's just crazy to see all this unfolding between our or right in front of our eyes.
I know. Yeah. Also, the just the lack of economic understanding. Again, I am no expert, but I saw somewhere that I believe it was, again, Jen Psaki said the $3.5 trillion spending budget or spending bill costs
the one yet to go in.
Yeah, or does not cost anything to Americans. It's free, basically. No, it's paid by taxpayers. So that $3.5 trillion is not free. That's not how money works. I wish it were, but it's not.
I'm gonna think through her logic real quick. Even if that was somewhat true, that maybe she was like, okay, so we're when the government takes this loan out from banks, and then we use this as our budget for that quarter. That's not U.S. tax dollars, and then the U.S. tax dollars that are being given pay for the debt that is amounting. That's bad logic. Like,
no,
still, that's just it's so
holes.
Flawed.
It really just that must be from the understanding that money grows on trees, because you're just getting it out of thin air. It's free money.
This is random, but I saw, so it was the treasurer, Secretary of the Treasury, said that in the Constitution there's a clause that will allow Biden if the what is it? The debt doesn't get
the debt ceiling.
The debt ceiling doesn't get extended, that he can himself implement a $1 trillion coin of platinum.
Wow. Okay.
I think it was out of, and that will further push the fiscal bill or the debt
ceiling,
so they can keep on spending because that money is not in circulation.
Okay, so what we're seeing is if you don't get your way, you make something up in the Constitution and justify it to rationalize your policy narrative?
I don't know. They're taking some. It was a weird clause that I was like, okay, I'm gonna go look this up. And it's there. It's like you can make a gold coin. You can make a
that sounds like an SNL
coin.
Skit to me.
A what?
Like,
an SNL skit.
If this were not true, it'd be funny. But the fact it is true is what's scary.
Yeah. I don't know if it's strategy to push back against the Republicans in the Congress or the House to say, okay, you're gonna use this and not vote for the debt ceiling to be extended, then we're gonna come up with this outrageous stunt, and then we're gonna do this and this.
Pull something and wait till it gets tied up in court. So they try to just get their way.
Yeah. That's when we see the thing like the ProLife Group, when we see progressives and conservatives coming together on an issue. It's so refreshing.
Yeah, exactly. That's definitely the best win of this week is the pro-life one. That was the one we were
even of the
most
past
excited.
3 weeks.
Yeah, it probably takes the cake.
I'm gonna be looking. I might stand this, but I'll be.
Yeah. Are you going to make an
watching this
account on
closely.
Twitter standing this?
I'm not on Twitter.
Not on
No,
Twitter.
thank you.
All right.
It's
Well,
too toxic.
that's fair. But you know a lot about it, so you can be our Twitter expert.
Oh, from now on, there will be a Liberty Mail TikTok, and we will be trying to spread that around. Maybe get a.
If you're on TikTok, make sure to follow us there.
Absolutely. Maybe get a. And it is just liberty.mail
Liberty.mail.
on TikTok. Maybe
We'll
get
some content, some man on the streets, perhaps.
Absolutely.
I think we're going to try to do a man on the street next week, going to another campus. So stay tuned for that, too.
Mm-hmm. That'll be really interesting because we'll be going to a state school that is.
Not quite as conservative as here at Grove City.
Took the words out of my mouth. There you go.
Yeah. So it looks like we had three good wins of this week. Thank you all for tuning in. Look for more content with the man on the street and the podcast next week. Please share this podcast with your friends, and we'll see you here next week for another episode of Liberty Mail.
Thanks, y'all.
For more information on this podcast or other programs, please visit faithandfreedom.com.